Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got another of my In the News segments with a few companies to discuss that had some recent news out. And I'm going to start out with, let me just get on a screen share here. And here is Arizona Silver. Arizona Silver had news out on May the 9th that they intersected high-grade gold in two zones drilled at their Philadelphia project in Arizona. Of particular note was the highlights included 51 grams per ton of gold and 16.1 grams per ton of silver in the FW vein from 54.88 to 56.44. and 18.2 grams per ton of gold and 46 grams of silver in the HW vein from 13.72 to 15.24. So as you can see, there's excellent distribution of their high grade to very high grade gold in their drilling results here, and silver as well. 51 grammer there, 18 grammer, 2.894, 8 grams down here, 5 grams, 5 grams. So as you can see, they're hitting a lot of gold in the system. Now, I'm always talking about the importance of investors doing their homework. And the reason that I think you should pay a lot of attention to doing your homework is you can find a lot of evidence of the potential for success if you do that homework. I believe that a lot of investors, their homework is watching fluctuations in stock prices. And I think that you missed the big story. And the big successes that I've seen in the mining sector, the investors that make the most money are those that tend to look at the projects and understand what the company's after. So down here, I'm going to get to some rock pictures. Okay, so what you see here is the intermittent quartz inside the matrix of rock, and this is what they're getting the past very good grades of gold, and what this can be described of as being above the boiling zone of a epithermal vein system. So even in the above the epithermal vein, our boiling zone, our bonanza zone of the vein, they're hitting exceptionally good grades, and it's widespread. And so what that gives you an indication of is you're sort of getting grades where you normally wouldn't be getting high grades. And that tells you a lot about the power of the gold and silver mineralizing system, okay? So this is their recent hole that they have in the lab right now. I'm very excited about this because I'm seeing more quartz, and here you can see a lot more quartz in this run here in PC 23111. But over here is something that has me very excited. I recently did an interview with Greg Hahn, and we talked about the project and the drilling that they were doing and the results that they got in that May 9th news release. You can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or also on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com, or on my Twitter at Allan B Reports. Okay, so in that interview, we talked about the potential of finding blind veins in these epithermal vein systems. And why those blind veins are so important is that sometimes in these epithermal vein systems, the veins don't make it all the way to surface. And so these are called blind veins. And one of the big success stories in the mining sector over the last decade or so was a company called Mag Silver. And Mag Silver has an exceptional mine now in Fresnillo, Zacatecas. And what's interesting about that is that the two veins that are making up their mine and their future mining are both blind veins, okay, with exceptionally high grade, very low cost to produce, and very high margins. So these are what I call cash-making machines of mines. And that's how those were found. Is there was a series of veins called the Saucito veins off of their property, and they were all going in the direction of the Mag Silver property. And so they felt that that cluster of veins potentially could go onto their property. They did some geophysics and had some other theories that led them to the successful discoveries of the Juanicipio and Valdecanis veins, blind veins. And so what really excites me about this new vein that they've hit is that it is a blind vein. And so it's the first of the blind veins. And so I'm very excited to see the results, because as you can see here, you've got much more competent primary epithermal or quartz veining. And then look at when you get outside, it still bleeds into that country rock and you still get your quartz veining. So this again is another indication of the power of the mineralizing system and the potential to find blind veins. So they have some veins that come to the surface, and those are not called blind veins. And then in these clusters of epithermal veins, you can find additional veins. So they've found their first blind vein, and I like the potential that they could find more. And, you know, that's the way these clusters of epithermal veins work. They kind of come up in a series. And you can oftentimes the focus will be on the ones that come to surface, but sometimes these blind veins can be exceptionally high grade. An example of that is also in the state of Zacatecas, Mexico, where one of the Mexican major mining companies was mining two veins at the Milagros mine, and they were parallel veins. And they decided to cut a tunnel through and connect the two veins at depth. And as they were cutting through, they hit a blind vein with off the charts high grades of silver. And so that's why these blind veins can be so important. Now, the known veins are also very exciting because, as I said earlier, they're at the top of an epithermal vein system. They haven't even got into the competent continuous quartz veins yet. And yet in the above the boiling zone, they're getting very good grades of gold and silver. So again, it goes back to talking about the power of the mineralizing system. Is very exceptional. And what this tells me is that as they get deeper into the system of the known veins, they're going to get into to primary quartz, continuous quartz with and what you'll see is textures in that quartz that suggests a long-lived system. And I have every confidence that that's what's going to happen, because in order to get those grades up into the breccia above the boiling zone, you have to have a long-lived, powerful system to get those grades up to where they are in the system above the boiling zone. So this has exceptional potential. And another great example of the importance of finding epithermal veins is also in Mexico. in the Las Chispas mine that's owned by Silvercrest. Silvercrest just announced their results, and in their results, now bear in mind that this is got the Las Chispas has a lot more silver in it, also silver and gold. They're producing silver at $11.45 all in sustaining costs for their production, and they're selling the silver at 25, let's say 25 bucks, 24, $25. So as you can imagine, there's huge profit in there, and they're only into their first quarter of full production since they announced that they had entered into full commercial production. And they've already been able to pay down their debt. They've paid 95% of the debt to get it into production, and they've increased their cash position. So these epithermal veins, when you find the special ones, they can be tremendously high value because they're low costs to produce from, and they have very high grades, and they have very high margins. And I think that this is the potential of what Arizona Silver has at their Philadelphia project in Arizona. And before I finish talking about them, now a lot of juniors right now are down to flat, trading near their 52-week lows. And as you can see in the Arizona Silver chart, they bottomed down here, let's say at about 20 cents back in October. But since then, they've been on a pretty impressive run. They went through a golden cross here in January. They started January with a low of about 26 cents. And as you can see, they've been outperforming a lot of their peers. And I'd also note a couple of technical indicators. One is here, the bottom of the 200-day moving average is at 28 cents. The bottom of the 50-day moving average is at 24 cents. So the stock is trading quite significantly above the lows of those moving averages, and they have both broken out the 200-day and the 50-day, and it is trading above the 50-day moving average. So trading above its moving averages. And so, these things don't happen by accident. They've made a very important group of drill holes in their shallow drilling. And again, I'll go back to that. Shallow drilling is hitting very good grades to bonanza grades, high grade to bonanza grades, and they're still above the boiling zone of an epithermal vein. So to have such widespread gold and silver mineralization above the boiling zone speaks to the power of that mineralizing system. I think they're onto something very special, and they still have a very modest valuation, a very strong uptrend, and a lot of news pending. So take a good look at Arizona Silver. I'm glad to have them on as a sponsor of my reports so I can keep a really close eye on what they're doing. All right. The next company I want to talk about is a company I've talked about before on the shows as a pick. It's Exploits Discovery Corp. And today they announced that Exploits Discovery continues to intersect visible gold. Assay results include 9.84 grams per ton gold average over 12 meters at their Bullseye project. As you can see here are the highlights, 9.84 meters or grams of gold over 12 meters. Included in that, 36 grams of gold, 27 grams of gold, 27.48 grams of gold, 19.22 grams of gold, 15.97 grams of gold. Now, what's interesting about this project is it's in very close proximity to Newfound Gold, and they're in the same kind of a system. They just got started at drilling this, and they're also already hitting some excellent results in their early drilling. Jeff Swinoga, who's the president and CEO of the company, commented, "We are excited to announce our best assay results since the start of our 2023 Bullseye drilling program. Our talented local team is seeing a broad network of multi-stage quartz veins and related sulfide mineralization commonly associated with the track of the Appleton Fault structure. We believe this demonstrates the Bullseye has the potential to replicate or extend the high-grade mineralization observed by our neighbors within 250 meters of our claim boundaries," end quote. Now, bear in mind that that neighbor they're talking about has around $1 billion valuation. Exploits has a microscopic valuation. So they're trying to make the case that the high grade that Newfound is finding that they're by the Appleton Fault, which is one of these deep structures that brings the fluids up to the surface with the gold in it in an orogenic gold system, and that they have one of those, and it certainly looks like it from the drilling. And as they state, they're also seeing visible gold in the where 10 grains of visible gold were noted within a network of quartz veins. So they're seeing the exact same kind of thing as their next door neighbor. So I think that puts them in pretty good company. Here's their Newfound gold, where you see some of the hits that this gray part is the Appleton Fault. Here you're seeing the hits that Newfound Gold is finding right beside them, and now they're also finding the same kind of stuff on their project. So very exciting stuff for this. There's a picture of the visible gold, yeah, interesting stuff for exploits discoveries. Faraday Copper is another company I want to go into. On May the 3rd, they announced that they had done a preliminary economic assessment. There we go. Faraday announces PEA for Copper Creek with net present value US $713 million and 4.2 billion pounds of measured and indicated copper mineral resources. You know, these are the kind of big projects that major copper producers are in great need of. The supply chain of the copper is very weak right now. You can see it in the inventories at the metals warehouses. Are hardly keeping up, not even keeping up with the daily demand. And so this tells you there's a really tight supply chain. And the reason that there's such a tight supply chain is there's not enough projects like this being found and being developed. And I certainly think that this will be a future mine. Not easy to find 4.2 billion pounds of copper in the measured and indicated in the resources. And then they announced today or yesterday, intersects 45 meters of 1.68% copper, 0.33 grams of gold, and 5.5 grams of silver near surface. Highlights there again, they intersected that nice thick intersection of very high grade copper. They also intersected 136 grams, 0.5% copper. That's what makes up copper mines these days, folks. Commenced a gold assaying program of historical drill core to determine the potential for inclusion in future resource updates. So that preliminary economic assessment that they talked about just a couple of weeks ago, this new drilling doesn't go into that. It's sort of a snapshot in time. So now they're expanding on the resource. And I've been talking about these guys quite a bit. And I really like the potential that they have a mine of the future, and something that that is in great need these days in the copper mining space. So when you have an important project like this, I think that these are the targets that the major mining companies are going to focus on taking over. And I definitely think that Faraday Copper could be a takeover target in the not too distant future. Alrighty, so that's my In the News show for today. The later in the week, I'll do a wrap up where I talk about the trends in the gold and the silver and the copper. It's needless to say, I'm very bullish on those, but I'll go into more of the trends on those later in the week. During the week, I'm trying to do these In the News shows on a regular basis, and also interviews. And I have a interview coming up later today, so stay tuned for that. On that note, as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors before making any decisions, and do that homework. As I talked about in the part on Arizona silver, I believe that if you do that homework, you can find these nuggets of wisdom that are suggestive of what will happen with the company in the future. And that's not based on the short-term fluctuations of the stock price. And, you know, the investors out there that focus on that tend to trade emotionally, whereas the best investors in the mining space, or any sector for that matter, are those that do their homework and understand very well the companies that they're investing in. That's why I do my shows, my interviews, my reports, and to try to help you in that regard. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.